Early in the morning, Seth wakes up to start another dull day in his life. He has no friends or family. His only company is the dogs at the animal control center where he works. After making sure all the animals are fed, Seth enters the cage with Lexi and cuddles her, craving some affection. One evening, while taking the bus home, Seth is surprised to see Holly. He approaches her to say hello, but she doesn't recognize him. He explains that they went to high school together. Although they never spent time together, Seth remembers her because she was popular, and he was a year above her. He notices she's writing in a notebook and calls her a writer. Holly quickly clarifies that she works as a waitress and writes only as a hobby. Seth makes a bad joke, which makes things awkward. Soon, Holly gets off the bus. Seth tries to ask her out, but she doesn't hear him. That night, Seth looks up Holly on social media and is happy to see she has a dog. The next day, he asks his coworker Nate for advice on how to approach girls. Nate tells him to be confident and funny. Later, Seth is heartbroken to find out that Lexi has to be put down. He takes her out of her cage, holds her gently, and speaks kindly to her. When the doctor reminds him he could adopt her, Seth explains he lives in a no-pets building and can't afford to move. After the injection, Lexi dies, and Seth takes her body to the crematory. Later, as he removes Lexi's profile from her cage, Seth hears a sound coming from the restricted area. He checks, but finds nothing unusual. After work, he continues looking at Holly's social media and starts taking notes about her life. He examines each photo carefully and eventually finds out where she works. The next day, Seth visits the diner where Holly works. Again, she doesn't remember him. He tries complimenting her hair, but she remains professional and simply serves his food. Moments later, Seth asks her out, but Holly turns him down, saying she has a boyfriend. Seth quickly replies that she doesn't, which creeps her out. She leaves the bill and walks away. That night, on her way home, Holly feels like someone is following her. Outside her house, Seth hides in the bushes. Holly tells her roommate Claire that someone is outside, but Claire thinks she's just being paranoid. Then Holly gets a call from her drunk ex-boyfriend, Eric. After hanging up, Claire tells her to forgive him because being alone is hard. Holly refuses and drinks instead. The next morning, Holly finds a large bouquet of flowers at the diner, with a card that says only, "Be mine." After work, she visits Eric at his bar and tells him to stop sending gifts, but he says it wasn't him. He tries to win her back, but Holly reminds him he cheated. Then Seth walks into the bar and watches from a distance. When Holly goes outside to smoke and write, Seth follows and tries to talk. She still doesn't recognize him and says she's leaving. Seth admits he sent the flowers, and Holly finally remembers him, realizing he's been stalking her. A desperate Seth insists he isn't crazy and just wants to talk, claiming he's thought of her ever since school. Holly tries to leave, but Seth blocks her. She pushes him away and rushes back into the bar. Inside, Eric notices Seth following her. Holly tells him Seth tried to grab her. Eric jumps over the counter and punches Seth, who ends up on the floor bleeding but laughing. Eric kicks him again, and Holly has to stop him from doing more. Eric throws Seth out and warns him never to return. On the floor outside, Seth notices that Holly dropped her notebook. At home, Seth treats his wounds and begins reading the notebook. It turns out to be Holly's journal, filled with her private thoughts and emotions. Seth stays up late reading every word, feeling connected to her anger and pain. The next day at work, Seth goes into the restricted area and discovers a hidden hatch. Below it, he finds an old room still connected to the power supply. This gives him an idea. Over the next few days, he follows online tutorials, buys supplies, and builds a cage in the abandoned room. He also studies Holly's journal and steals medicine from the shelter. At home, he tests the sedative on himself. It works, and he falls asleep with no side effects. A few nights later, Holly is walking home and senses someone behind her. She stops and looks around, but Seth is hiding. She walks again, feels it again, and sprays her pepper spray, accidentally hitting a homeless man. Panicked, she runs off, while Seth watches from the shadows. He decides to follow the man, who screams in the night. Later, Seth climbs a wall and enters Holly's apartment through a window. Holly is in the bathroom taking medicine and hears the noise. She rushes to the living room and finds the window open, so she shuts it and goes to bed. That's when Seth jumps on her and injects her with the sedative. Holly struggles briefly before passing out. Seth hides her in a box and takes her to the shelter. When Nate questions him, Seth lies and says their boss asked him to handle a delivery. Nate believes him and just asks him to sign in. Holly starts to wake up and makes a noise, so Seth coughs to cover it. She makes another noise, and Nate hears it, but blames it on the AC. Seth leaves, and Holly fully wakes up inside a cage in the abandoned room. Terrified, she tries to escape and rips off a nail in the process. She screams for help, but only the dogs can hear her. They bark loudly, but Nate assumes they're just acting normally. In the morning, Seth brings Holly a bedpan and talks to her gently. Holly insults him, so he says she's lost her chance to eat and they'll try again tomorrow. As he walks out, he ignores her screams. Once alone, Holly starts filing at the bars using the chain on the lock. Seth finally gives Holly some water and food. She grabs his leg, begging him not to leave, but he says it's important to set boundaries in their relationship. He leaves after repeating that they'll try again tomorrow. That night, Holly starts imagining that Claire is there with her, describing all the terrible things Seth will do. Holly yells at her to shut up. Eventually, she has to use the bedpan and gets scared when a rat approaches. She freaks out and kicks it until it dies. The next day, Seth cleans up the blood. Holly asks if he'll take advantage of her, and he says no. But when she asks if he'll kill her, he says, "I hope not," which terrifies her. Seth explains that he might not have a choice if he can't save her. She thinks he's part of a religious cult, but Seth claims he's not doing this for himself, he's doing it for her because she's special. He says he felt lost before he met her and thought she truly saw him, but he later realized that what she showed the world was fake. He asks who the real Holly is because he wants to know if there's still a chance to save her. If not, she'll never leave the room. Holly insults him, so Seth walks out. As he leaves the restricted area, Seth runs into Nate, who reminds him that he shouldn't be in that part of the shelter. Nate sends Seth off to clean, then checks the door, but it's locked. That night, the Claire hallucination asks Holly what she'll do, and Holly says she'll wait. The next morning, Seth shows Holly he has her journal. He says he feels sorry for her, especially because she writes about love in such a sad way. Holly responds that a creepy stalker can't understand love either. Seth then brings up Claire, revealing he heard Holly talking to her and using two voices. He asks if Claire is in the room, and Holly says no, but she can see her behind Seth. She admits she knows Claire isn't real, but Seth means more than just this room. He's learned that Holly has been hallucinating Claire at home too. As Seth reads the journal, the truth comes out. Claire was real and used to live with Holly around the time she got engaged to Eric. Claire had an affair with Eric, which Holly discovered through his email. During a car ride, Holly confronted Claire, who apologized and said it didn't mean anything. Furious, Holly began driving recklessly. Eventually, she crashed the car. Both women woke up covered in blood. Holly found a glass shard in her stomach. When she heard Claire speaking, she pulled out the shard and stabbed Claire in the eye, killing her. The police believed Claire died in the crash. Back in the present, Holly says she's a fiction writer. Seth admits that's why he had to be sure before going to the police. He's been following her for days and discovered that since Claire's death, Holly has been killing random people in brutal ways. She was the one who set the homeless man on fire. Seth believes Holly keeps the journal because she wants to be caught and punished, but he's not here to punish her, he's here to save her. Holly agrees she wants to be saved as Seth leaves. The Claire hallucination claps at Holly's performance. Holly then admits she was lying just to make Seth think he has a chance. During Seth's next visit, he brings her water and a cloth to wash with, and can't stop staring at her skin. They talk about her murders. She says she enjoys killing, but Seth doesn't believe her. He thinks she's acting out of guilt and trauma. Holly then tells a story about sharks banging their heads against the glass in aquariums, and starts acting like one. She only stops when Seth asks. She keeps taunting him, saying that if she kills herself, the police will blame him. Disturbed, Seth leaves. Later, Seth is called to the boss's office and scolded for not doing his job. He isn't fired but is given a warning, one more mistake and he's out. During his next visit, Seth gives Holly only 2 chocolate bars, saying she has to learn that she's not in control. If she doesn't behave, she won't get any food. Holly tries to manipulate him by saying she dreamed of them living together by the beach. Seth gives in and agrees to bring her more food. When Seth leaves the restricted area to get snacks, Nate sees him again and becomes suspicious. This time, the door is unlocked. Nate goes down the hatch and is shocked to find Holly in a cage. She begs for help, so Nate starts banging the lock to break it. At that moment, Seth returns. Holly silently signals him to attack. She keeps Nate distracted while Seth sneaks up and hits him in the head. Nate pushes Seth against the wall, so Seth pulls out a knife and stabs him multiple times. As Nate tries to chase him, Holly sticks out her leg, making Nate trip. She sweetly encourages Seth to finish him off. Seth smashes Nate's head with a cinder block while Holly enjoys the sight. Afterward, Seth breaks down, but Holly calms him and gives instructions to hide the body. Using tools from the clinic, Seth removes Nate's teeth, nails, and fingerprints. Then he cuts up the body and feeds it to the dogs. The rest is burned in the crematory. After showering, Seth calls his boss to say Nate left for an errand and never came back. Later, he throws the teeth in the river. Back at the shelter, he starts cleaning the blood while Holly rambles. She implies he's attracted to her dark side. She grabs his hand and tries to force him to touch her inappropriately, but Seth pulls away. Later, Seth finds a detective going through Nate's things. The detective questions Seth, who gives a very shaky story. The detective finds it suspicious that Seth already speaks of Nate in the past tense. The next day, Seth moves carefully since the detective is still around. He brings food to Holly, but she won't speak. After days of begging, she finally talks and asks Seth to cut off his finger as proof of love. He refuses, so Holly gives another manipulative speech about how different she's always felt and how only he understands her. Seth hides in the bathroom, freaking out for several minutes. Eventually, he returns, and Holly promises to behave if he gives her what she asked for. Seth sits beside the cage and cuts off his finger in pain. Holly pretends she's reaching for the finger but grabs the knife instead and threatens to kill herself if he doesn't unlock the cage. Seth opens it, and Holly slowly walks out. She hugs him, says she loves him, and then slashes his neck. The clear hallucination points to the open door in the background. Later, Holly is dating Eric again. She's also signed a book deal to publish her journal as a fiction novel. One day, when Eric gets a message from another woman, Holly notices he's cheating again. She calmly hands him the phone without a word. Afterward, she goes to an abandoned warehouse, where Seth is locked in a cage. It turns out she mutilates him whenever she feels the